Hi everybody, Wade here, VK1MIC. I'm just at home today and on my lunch break, so I wanted to make a couple of quick videos on Winlink here in Australia. I noticed a lot of videos online talking about Winlink are very, very American heavy, and the situation is just completely different here in Australia. For instance, we have very few UHF VHF packet gateways. Even on HF, we have a very limited number, maybe less than 5. And the ones that are available are often on Packdoor, which is very expensive. The modem costs as much as a HF radio nowadays. So I personally use RDOP, which is a free audio connection method, and I use a Raspberry Pi to make that connection. And I'll show you what that looks like from my end shortly. But first, I want to give you a quick look when I talk about the distribution there of those layouts of where the receiving stations are. So for those that don't know, Winlink is essentially email that leaves generally the radio by RF, makes a gateway, and then becomes part of the internet. It's really important as a technology to allow us to communicate with non-radio amateurs, as well as agencies during times of emergency, but also just keeping in touch with our friends and relatives is also really important. As you can imagine, Australia is very big, and while mobile phone coverage covers over about 90% of where people live, people do not live in a lot of the remote places where we like to go, camp, hike, and spend our time. So that is a big issue. So I'll flip over and show you some of the maps, and you can see where stations are in Australia. So what we have here is the distribution of VHF and UHF packet RMS stations, or remote mail system, I think they're called. Or anyway, basically they're the RFIP gateway. So you can see there's one here in Perth, one in Melbourne, one here in the ACT, which is mine, VK1MIC-10, which is literally sitting next to the computer I'm working on right now. And then there's one in Sydney, which will be Gerard's VK2IO. Okay, so you can see that layout there on UHF VHF, which is a mode that operates line of sight. So you can imagine you need to be near one of those. On HF, this is RDOP. This is the audio or the free mode that is currently being pushed. So you can see there are a couple more in the distribution space. There's 2 in Melbourne, 2 in Victoria, one right on the border, which is VK3 MIT, which I think we'll make a connection with today on 80 meters. Gerard's is currently offline, I know, because he said his radio was having some issues. There is one VK4 LM, yes, which if you Google that on Google, you'll see a really great build video and pictures of where they've got that set up. That's a really great remote site. And then we've got VK2JN, which he's now a VK8, but his station used to also be in Sydney. So that will give some gateways into the South Pacific, etc., for yachts and sailing, etc. As you can see, our nearest stations after Australia on RDOP are actually Hawaii. So that will indicate some difficulties. And for anyone that's ever worked radio in Australia knows that getting over the desert country here in Australia is much harder than something of almost similar distance, which would be New Zealand. New Zealand, I can work any day of the week. So we might move on, and I will make a connection using my Raspberry Pi setup, and we'll see how that goes. So one of the features I really enjoy using on my Pi is Winlink email. Using the scripts and system designed by Jason, KM4ACK, who has an entire YouTube channel dedicated to amazing stuff that we can do with our Raspberry Pis. I have my inbox for Winlink open right here. It's a web-based interface using PAT on the Raspberry Pi. So right now I'm going to use the auto connect feature that Jason has developed. So if I open my PAT menu, another thing that Jason has developed, I'm going to go PAT auto connect, tell it which band. In this case, it's the middle of the day, 80 meters should be fine. And I'm going to say connect to any station between 50 and 1,000 kilometers from my current location on 80 meters. So I'm going to hit start connection. And you can see everything starting here. I've got the readout of the data, and I've got a graphical user interface, or GUI, for RDOP, and my radio should very shortly kick over to the frequencies that we need to start dialing. Here we go. And the first station we're dialing is VK3 MIT, which is just over the Victorian border and should be perfectly workable on 80 meters. There we go, we're starting to get acknowledgements there. Now it's also important to remember that Winlink email over HF is slow. It's slow, but it works. And you should be using HF when other methods fail, such as if you do not have an internet connection through your mobile phone, for example, when you do not have VHF or UHF line of sight for nodes. And that's the other thing. In Australia, we don't have very many at all. I think less than 5 in total UHF or VHF WinLink nodes, and they connect at either 1200 or 9600 BPS. So we've connected to the station. We're doing all the handshakes, and you can see the frames being sent and received here. You can see we've got a link quality somewhere above 62%, which is available up here in this little scatter. And you can see the information coming through here. Okay, and then you can see we're testing here. Oh no, that's the email I have sent. We're just waiting to receive it over the air. And there we go. There's the email I sent from my Gmail to Winlink saying I'm testing from the internet to Winlink. And you can see the station is now going through the hang up procedure. Wait till that hangs up. And there we go, disconnected, and it's returned. Plus, through Jason's setup, you also get an indication that you connected through which station on which frequency. And the other thing I like is it appears down here. You can see I've been doing some testing this morning, and that is amazing. If that hadn't have connected to 3 MIT, it would have rolled on to another VK3 station, anyone that's within those parameters. And as you can see, the Raspberry Pi, if it has an internet connection, downloads at 2 AM every day the current RDOP HF stations, RMS gateway list. Okay, thank you.